3, 4. Don't let me get one. 1, 2, 3.
Touch light, man. Touch light. Dizzy Gillespie band. Dizzy Gillespie band. He was so bad. Who? Dizzy Gillespie. You know, when I was a little kid, he was my favorite trumpet player. Yeah. Did I ever tell you about that story? Yeah, I love Dizzy Gillespie because I played the trumpet. You know, and Dizzy Gillespie was just my favorite guy in the whole world. And then I went to go see him play, and I snuck backstage. And he came up to me and put his arm around me and hugged me close for about 15 minutes and just talked to me.
And you just did a gig with him in Paris.
Really?
Yeah. Looks like a double bill. Let's see a joke. Let's see a joke.
Oh, boy. Hey, wait a minute. You can't go ahead. There you go, partner. What do you mean? Yeah, one, two them together. One down like this. Just one together with the legs up. Now legs down. Ready?
All right.
Quante volte l'anno sei in concerto? Per esempio quest'anno? È difficile.
Quest'anno un lavoro 8 mesi.
8 mesi.
Turni dopo turni.
È difficile a fare la musica. Vero?
Everybody has a story about Chet Baker. I can't forget the first time I ever saw him. It was in New York City a long time ago, in the winter, and it was snowing a lot, and I was crossing the street in front of Tiffany at 57th and 5th. He was in an old Chevy convertible with the top down. He was stopped at a red light, and the snow was falling all over him. His hair was all slicked down. He was listening to Zoot Sims on the car radio. Oh, Jerry. He could have cared less about the snow, just the jazz.
He was bad. He was trouble, and he was beautiful.
Do you find life boring?
Under some circumstances, it can be very boring. And for a lot of people, it can be very boring. Very. Being hungry, being cold.
Have you experienced that?
Oh, yeah. Not too long ago. You never have? Huh. How fortunate you are. Who in the hell?
That kid. And the legend was that Charlie Parker called Miles Davis and Dizzy Gillespie and said, "Hey, there's a little white kid out here who's giving you a lot of trouble. You better watch out for him." Dick Bach was a young record producer, and he was recording Chet, and so I showed him the pictures, and he hired me to come and start photographing. It was Chet Baker's first recording session. I believe it was his first anyway, the first that I know of. And I was photographing him. And the strongest thing I remember about Chet was that I was attracted to him photographically, and the camera was too. And Chet just drew like a magnet, like he was, you know, he loved the camera. But yet it was very unpretentious. He didn't know.
Il solista di tromba Chet Baker.
You're supposed to play football from Oklahoma.
Yeah. I'm supposed to pick up the horn. What I'm tripping unless you came from Oklahoma and you play horn.
You're supposed to play football
It doesn't stack up.
Doesn't fit together, then.
You got some kind of musical family or something?
My father was a musician.
Did you learn to teach how to play?
No, he didn't teach me how to play.
You taught yourself?
For the most part.
The album that says that you failed your course on chord progressions.
Yeah.
That gave me hope.
I just made a clam on the piano.
I'll tell you, that's
Chet Baker. Listen to him.
Want to take a take on this?
Sure.
You like it that deliberate?
It's nice, man. It's all right. Is this about ready? Okay. Chetty? John?
Yeah, let's do it.
Don't forget the do-wahs, you know what I mean? All right, here we go.
I'll wait for you.
All right. 3 and
Wait a minute.
4.
Let's just do it.
Yeah,
Or you want to rehearse the intro again?
I think I got it.
Okay.
Okay. 3.
Whenever you're ready, then.
Okay, we're ready.
Are we rolling in the booth?
Yes, we are.
Go ahead, Frank.
Hold on a second, wait. Are they rolling?
Okay, ready, John?
Yes.
Yeah, good. Okay, let's go.
3 and 4 and...
I was going to college at the time, and I was promoting a jazz night at the Hague Club, a little club off of Wilshire Boulevard. And one night, Chet Baker dropped in. Jerry Mulligan was the saxophone player that evening. They hadn't really met. I think Chet was playing with Charlie Parker at the Tiffany Club, which is about 4 blocks away. And he just... At the end of, I guess, the engagement at that night at the Tiffany, he came in and just sat in, and it was so fresh and so natural, the natural talent that it started to change the whole picture there. In fact, the next week I hired Chet and Jerry to play together, and by the 3rd week they had booked Red Norvo's trio into the club, and Red didn't have a piano. He played, with Tal Farlow and Charlie Mingus on bass and guitar. He said, I don't want the piano on the stage, store it somewhere where there was no place. The Hague was so small, I think it held 52 people. The owner, John Bennett, put it in his apartment. And Jerry said, it makes no difference. He says, I can play just as well without a piano. And so the Jerry Mulligan Quartet was born.
Imagination is silly.
Days, of hearing Chet and Jerry at the Hague were probably some of the greatest experiences I've ever had in jazz. And I've been producing jazz records for 40 years now, and I produce some of the greatest musicians. But I think Chet is one of the most unique players. And I got him at the best time in his life. He was just a kid, he was 22 years of age, just out of the Army. He hadn't had junk yet. He was smoking some pot, but he hadn't gotten into a habit. And so I got the best years and some of the best music that he ever played. And it was a thrill. It wasn't long before Chet really, went past Jerry in a sense. He was, becoming so bright in what he was doing that he had to have his own thing. And then it caused difficulty because Jerry resented the fact that Chet was no longer going to be a sideman, which broke up probably one of the best jazz quartets of the day. At his best, I don't think anybody played any better than Chet Baker on trumpet. Because he sounded to me like he was the history of jazz. There was Louis Armstrong, and there was Bix Beiderbecke, and there was Bunny Berrigan, all rolled into one. It had that spark that Bunny had, and the lyrical quality that Bix Beiderbecke had, and yet Chet was always fresh and new. He never really played cliches.
To sign the back of that imagination. I've never heard anybody sing so soft.
Oh, yeah.
You sing soft, but it keeps going, you know. It just keeps going and going and going, and it stays the same. Yeah, it just
sounds
keeps
like
going.
the horn.
Yeah. Like at that end, when you played at the end of that one song there.
Okay.
You're not going to carry your horn, huh?
No.
Come on, Chet. I could be a world champion by the end of this year.
So, Frank, you're not going to come over and have enchilada,
That's the limit?
tostada?
Don't change your hair for me. Not if you care for me. Stay, little funny Valentine.
Oh, at least 15 or 20 years, I was shocked. I mean, I was just stunned that I didn't know it was the same person because he's changed so much. And it made me... Are you looking for your lighter?
Yeah. I'm always looking for my lighter. I got it. That's not mine.
Good evening, folks. This is Douglas Dumbrill. Better forget the ice cubes, gang. We really got a cool show today. Boo! Now, let's see who are our guests. Look at that. That's Miss Better Posture. And we also have Mr. Bad Posture. No, we have marvelous musicians, Murray McEachern and Chet Baker. Great guys. We're going to bring out now one of the very best trumpet players in the whole world. He's been with us a couple of times recently. I can't find any information about him, but I don't need it. He happens to be one of my favorite musicians. He plays very definitely jazz trumpet, and yet there's something extremely lyrical and even somewhat romantic about his tone and his whole style of playing. Let's welcome a great talent, Mr. Chet Baker. Here he is.
Lately, you've been so forgetful. A kind of a stop and go forgetfulness that bothers me. Kisses, I once had a net full.
It was 1946, and I was 15 years old. And Hirsch brought Chetty over to my house, and my mother made bacon and lettuce and tomato sandwiches. And Chetty ate his, and then he took mine. And he kept eating. He was real hungry. My mother said, that guy is really hungry. And he kept eating, and she used to like to bake a lot then. She baked cakes, and he ate all the cake, too. So he was hungry. He was very thin, though. He was a good-looking kid, and he played the trumpet. But anyway, we were doing a job at the Miramar Hotel in Santa Barbara with this little band. And Bill Perkins was up there, and his mother was rich, and she had a house in the hills in Santa Barbara. So after the job, we went up to his house. How slick Chetty was, you know. And finally, I had Aunt Jasmine in the bedroom, and I was in bed with her. Then I turned around for some reason, and when I turned back, Chetty was fucking her. And they were going, and she was saying, "Oh, Jack." And so she thought I was fucking her, and it was Chetty that was fucking her. This is how fast he was, and you know, and ever since then, Ann has really liked me a lot.
Wish you had tried much less forgetfulness. You'd be upset and forgetful. Won't be able to forget.
And being a singer, I was a camera girl, and I did it in LA. I did it at the Ambassador Hotel, the Coconut Grove. I was the only girl that worked in the place, and it was a very plush, nice job. And across the street one way was my father's club, the Tiffany, and across the street the other way was the Hague, where Chet Baker was playing. And we cared for each other very much. We used to spend a lot of time driving. And I never heard Chet sing at that time. He would only sing in the car. But we managed to be on Pacific Coast Highway a lot. He wouldn't drink coffee. He didn't smoke cigarettes. We did smoke grass, but we all felt that that was a really healthy thing to do. I mean, that was the natural high. We would go skiing, boating, and we were very in touch with nature, in touch with life. Before the 60s, when it got to be everybody's religion. And we sure knew how to get lost. We got lost on a sailboat in Balboa Bay, and we loved it.
Yeah, I wasn't even aware of Dizzy Gillespie and Roy Aldridge and Charlie Shavers and until 3 years later, actually, when I was in the army in Berlin, and I heard I heard it on a V-disc, what they call a V-disc, over the Armed Forces Network. They started playing a lot of Stan Kenton and Woody Herman, and then Dizzy Gillespie and Charlie Parker. And man, that was a rude awakening, let me tell you. From Harry James to Dizzy Gillespie is kind of a big jump, you know. And I was playing every night someplace. There was a session in L.A. and I met Dexter and Pony Dexter and Wardell Gray, Frank Morgan, who has just been playing in New York recently, and Hampton Hawes and Shelley Mann and Shorty Rogers and Jack Sheldon and the Condoli brothers, Frank Rossellino and Pete Christlieb and all, Bill Holbrook and Jack Montrose and all those West Coast cats, and Russ Freeman. And I got a job. One of my first jobs was with Vito Musso. You probably don't remember him, but he made one record of Come Back to Sorrento when he was with Stan Kenton, that it was such a big hit that he was able to, you know, be booked and have his own group and and travel around, and the drummer got me on the band. So he had a very hip rhythm section, you know, but he'd get up there and play. My
name is Hersh Hamill. I'm a bass violin player. I've been in Los Angeles many years, playing since 1949. And one of the things about Chet at the time was that he wasn't so interested in playing the bebop riffs that were popular at the time, as he was playing pretty tunes like Zing Goes the Strings to Your Heart and Make Believe, The Way You Look Tonight. At the time, there was a lot of talk about West Coast jazz, or cool jazz, as some of the New York or Eastern musicians used to call it. And they sort of put our style of music down out here in Los Angeles. I really don't think that they understood that musicians like Chet Baker and Art Pepper were really products of their environment. The sun and the beach and the warmth and the romanticism. Chet's kind of playing was just indigenous to jazz as the Beach Boys were later on to rock and roll.
I loved Chet long before I met him because he personified for me. I can't do it.
It's okay, darling.
I loved Chet way before I met him because for me he personified the very thing that gave meaning to my life, and that is jazz. I was playing drums in a little pizza place, and he walked in one night with his trumpet. I knew it was Chet, and he looked like a Greek god to me, and I fell in love with him immediately. He was very gentle, very sweet, very charming. I guess that's what it was, the mystique about him. The Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde kind of scenario. Shortly before my mother died, Chet was doing his number about having to get high, and finally got some money out of my brother. I had left the home by that time. I couldn't take it anymore. So I went to a women's shelter to get away from it. And I spoke with my brother on the phone, and he said, well, I told Chet to leave. He's full of shit. I never want to see him again. Because Chet cons people. He has this ability to elicit sympathy, you know, from people. And it's all a big act. Like he came to my brother and put his arms around him. I can't make it. I wait every morning for the sun to come up, and it's agonizing, and I'm hurting so bad. And my brother fell for it and gave him $50 so he could go cop. And after that, he realized that he was being conned because Chet said, how was I? Was I pretty good? I should have been an actor. So you really never know when Chet is being sincere.
Every time we say goodbye, every time we say goodbye, I wonder why the gods above me, who must be in the know, about it. I can hear a word somewhere begin to sing about it. There's no love song finer, but how strange the change from major to minor every time we say goodbye.
Played real good trumpet. He could play, he didn't know what note he was hitting. He would just press the valves down, and it was real easy for him to play. I hated this because I played the trumpet too, and it was real hard for me to play. Every day I had to practice all day long, practice scales, practice the Arbenz book. Chetty never practiced at all. He just could play, and he knew every song. He could just play any tune, and he knew the melody, and he could play jazz to it. And he always knew where he was. And it was real hard for me. I never knew where I was, and I would always forget what bar we were in. In fact, where are we now? My mother bought me a Steinway piano for $3,000, and Chet couldn't understand why I got a Steinway piano instead of a car, because he really couldn't think about having to work at music. It was just easy for him. Everything came easy for Chetty. He was just a natural musician.
Begin to sing about it. There's no love song finer, but how strange the change from major to minor every time we say goodbye.
Sounds great in here.
Yeah, that was it.
You hear that?
Yeah.
That ending was can't play it for, man. You gotta. Those are, what do you call it? Timing. That's just timing. What's fits the timing at that moment.
Hey, Chet. Would you like a glass of wine?
Yeah. Somebody put that down there.
I wanted to ask you about the psychiatric ward and the questionnaires you told me about and how you manipulated your way out of the Army.
Well, before I got transferred, I made up my mind I wanted to get out of the Army. So I started seeing the post-psychiatrist and complaining about not being able to go down to the latrine in the morning and do my business while sitting alongside 12 other guys talking and reading the newspaper and smoking, and I started going across the street in a clump of bushes, and I told him that, and of course he checked all that out, found out it was true, and that helped a great deal. That and the multiple answer questionnaires that they give you, you know. They ask you if you want to be a mechanic or a florist or work for the forestry department. And I would always pick the most feminine one, you know. And I told him I smoked marijuana, you know, and I played bebop. And then I got transferred out to the middle of the desert, and I stayed there for a few months and went AWOL, and I turned myself back in to this post-psychiatrist in San Francisco who accompanied me to the MPs. And I got sent to the stockade, and I stayed there for a few days. And to get high in the stockades, these guys, what they were doing was sniffing fumes from a rag stuffed in an army truck gasoline tank. And I saw that, and I said, I got to get out of here. You know, there's got to be a better way. Yeah. So I kind of put myself in a trance, and nobody could get through to me for hours on end, you know. I'd just sit there staring into the distance, and they gave me a Seconal and put me in a private cell that night, and the next day I was transferred to the neuropsychiatric ward. So it was kind of tricky business trying to keep from getting the shock treatments and at the same time getting what I wanted, which was out of the Army.
It isn't much, but it's Wrigley's best. Don't swallow it.
And we had a good time out in the desert there for about 3 months. Everybody was getting loaded. The grass was $30 a kilo.
Oh, okay.
After 3 months, I decided that it was time to leave. So I went AWOL. And I had such an influence on the band that the day after I went AWOL, half the band went AWOL. And the band leader flipped out.
What's the matter? Am I bringing you down? Smile. Doesn't move you, huh? Well, try this one, Prez.
Oh, stuff. Take it easy. Take it easy. What if he was a drummer?
But nevertheless, I was discharged 3 weeks later. General discharge under honorable conditions, unadaptable to Army life.
Long ago my heart and mind got together.
His father wanted him to be just a natural musician, but his father really held reins on him. I don't think they were so close. I think he was closer to me. He was just exactly like his father. We lived in Oklahoma City with his aunt and uncle. They had a radio, and that we only had popular music on for 1 hour in the day. And when it was on, he would climb up on the stool and just sit there for 1 hour and listen. And then when it was through playing, he would just climb down and be real quiet for a while and then start playing. And he learned songs by memory when he was that young. Yes, he didn't get a trumpet till he was about 11. And his father bought it at a pawn shop, and he just brought it home and sat it down and didn't say, Chet, this is yours. So Chet just took it and started practicing and listening to records, and in 2 weeks he was picking out the 2 o'clock jump by Harry James.
My father had been a musician, and unfortunately when I was born in 29 it was the Depression, and he had to give up playing because nobody had any money to go out and listen to music or go dancing or anything like that, in Oklahoma anyway, in those years. So later on, in California, he gave me a trombone because Jack Teagarden was his favorite. And I tried to play it, but it was so clumsy and so big for me. I couldn't reach the bottom positions, and the mouthpiece was too big. So he took it away and brought home a trumpet after about 3 weeks, and it was kind of just love at first sight, and I've been playing it ever since.
Well, he was ditching school, you know, and I just knew he was going to get in trouble, so we just signed him up for the Army. And then when he went to El Camino College, he played in the band, but his bandmaster said that he would never make it as a musician because he kept putting in things, you know, he put in little riffs. And the first time that Chet played a concert, he got a telegram from him.
What did he say?
Well, congratulations on everything.
The critics and the popular, where all the people vote for their favorite instrumentalist, and even tied Nat King Cole in 1954 in the male vocalist category, which was incredible because I had never even been on the thing before.
Vera, Chet became a famous musician, and he won all those awards, but did he disappoint you as a son?
Yes. Yes. But let's don't go into that.
The moon will rise, but all in vain, for there's no use in shining while my lady sleeps.
I first came across him when I was 16 years old, playing in a high school dance band in Oregon. And we'd just discovered Charlie Parker and Red Young Man with a Horn. Chet was the young man with a horn in a way. From Here to Eternity had come out a couple of years before, and there's a touch of Robert E. Lee Pruitt in there as well. And this was the Eisenhower era. There weren't that many antisocial, slightly antisocial role models to look up to. And when the first Chet Baker albums on Pacific Jazz came out, here was this incredible, fluent music, and we all wondered where it came from. There was a channel of kind of a danger that he communicated in the same way that James Dean did, but on a more underground level. And he looked like kind of a bad boy. At that time, it wasn't an underground culture so much, but that's all we had to go for.
So finally Hollywood picked up on the image and decided to make a film on the early life of Chet Baker starring Chet, but Chet got busted and went to Europe, so they changed the story a little bit and put Robert Wagner and Natalie Wood in it and called it All the Fine Young Cannibals.
A whole lot of people were just obsessed with Chet Baker. Jazz musicians then had names like Buck and Lockjaw and Peanuts and Dizzy. And here was his name Chet, which is sort of a soft sound. Americans' role models of the time were more like a football halfback or fullback. And that's why Chet, I mean, you see him on this, I don't know how old he was there, but that's about what he looked like during this period. He looked about 21 or 22. The way he played, what he looked like, his name, everything, it all went together. Sometimes you see jazz musicians who are wonderful, but their visual image doesn't seem to have very much to do with the way they play. But with Chet, it was all of a piece. He affected a lot of us this way. We used to absolutely, with bated breath, wait for the new albums to come out. And he was a real, incredible original.
And even the movie continued to embellish the romantic myth of the jazz trumpet player.
But it was an international group of people. And jazz was the cement that really kept that whole lifestyle going. When you see movies about the 50s, everybody thinks it was about Buddy Holly and Richie Valens and stuff like that. But the people that I knew in the 50s, I mean, they had a record collection. It was partly eclectic. There'd be a Frank Sinatra record, there'd be West Side Story, some shows, but it was jazz. I didn't know anybody who had a Buddy Holly record, and I was a teenager in the 50s. I spent my whole teens in the 50s. I hung out with a lot of jazz musicians in Paris. I mean, everybody came through. Bud Powell was living at the Louisiana Hotel, Dexter Gordon at the Crystal Hotel, Johnny Griffin, Art Taylor, Duke Jordan, Alan Eager was there. He wasn't playing, but he was there. Lucky Thompson. It just goes on and on. Sidney Bechet had just died when I arrived in Paris. All kinds of generations. And I was living in a hotel called the Beat Hotel in 1960. Number 9 G. Liqueur, and there was Allen Ginsberg and William Burroughs were living in that hotel. Jack Kerouac had just gone out the door. And there was a little street called the Rue de la Huchette. And I was walking down this street, and I heard this sound. I looked at this picture on a wall, and there was this picture of Chet. And I walked through the door. There's a place called the Chat qui pêche, which means the cat who fishes. And it was built above a Roman vault of a cellar. And I went down, and I knew every groove of every Chet Baker record. I knew what he sounded like in my sleep. Nothing on record even began to approach what he really sounded like live. I had hoped and prayed that somebody somewhere could have recorded the way he was playing then. He was 29 years old, he was in the peak of his form, and playing so fast and so clean. I went down to the Chat qui pêche, and I was sitting there, and this French girl sat down next to me, and he was playing. And I turned to her to say something, and she said, "Don't talk to me, I'm in love with Chet Baker." And I said, "So am I." It's hard, having just seen Round Midnight. I mean, I later lived in the Louisiana Hotel. But I asked Bud Powell's wife, Buttercup, about it. I said, how does Bud look so good? I mean, he seems to be preserved. And she said, don't worry, baby, the deterioration's on the inside.
You're so appealing that I'm soon revealing my love for you over again. Cigarette burns me, I wake with a start. My hand isn't hurt, but there's pain in my heart. But we'll love anew just as we used to do when I'm deep in a dream of you.
I thought about playing trumpet when I was a little kid, and I always used to listen to your record. That's how I learned to play, man.
What do you think of that Cadillac?
Yeah, I got a Caddy too. I got a 69 convertible Caddy. It's bad, man.
Oh, this is a 15.
No, 15, that's even cool. Mine's like just when they started getting really big and ugly, you know?
No, wait a minute. There's no bigger or uglier Cadillac
In a 50s, really? It looked like it was you, though.
The pink one, too. It's comfortable. Float around.
Yeah. People always tell me that Chet Baker liked to float around.
You like to float around a little bit?
I get off.
One time before I ever heard you, when I was playing trumpet, someone told me that you played like, they said, well, Chet Baker plays a lot like Miles Davis. What do you think about that? That's your kind of style.
You can say that. people that don't have enough ears to be able to tell the difference between Miles and me, or Miles and Clifford Brown, or Miles and Dizzy Gillespie, or Lee Morgan. We just played with Dizzy the day before yesterday.
Lee Morgan got shot on the bandstand, didn't he?
Lee Morgan, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, shit.
His wife shot him.
Yeah.
Ow! You've been married, Chet.
Yeah. But not shot.
Really? Clifford Brown died in a car accident when he was 24, right?
Yeah.
And he did all those great recordings in a 2-year span when he died. You know that song Joy Spring? Clifford Brown, I can't hear Joy Spring goes, Alright! Hey, you said you were gonna sing for us there, bud.
I can see any of these girls in that gray Jaguar convertible of yours traveling around the country with that big common dog.
I don't think I know them, but it could have worked out differently.
She was too good to me.
They're nice looking ladies.
How can I get along now?
I like them a lot. Guy's a good photographer, alright.
He took Marilyn Monroe's first pictures. I think he was in love with her.
Beautiful. So these were the girls that were around in the 50s. Does that look like one of your exes?
Well, there are a couple of photographs of different women that I've known on some of the albums.
Who's that black girl in the empty room? Maybe not black.
She's not black, she's Pakistani, East Indian.
Is she one of you?
It was my second one.
How many times were you married?
3.
Who was your first one?
Her name is Charlene. She's from Compton, Linwood area. And then Halima, and then we're still married to an English girl I met in Italy. Maybe the day I got my Alfa Romeo SS. That was a nice day. I had a lot of fun that day.
Did you drive at 90 miles an hour?
It would run along. It was only 1300 cc, but it would run along at 125 miles an hour. But it was just so low off the ground that made it seem like you were really flying. Nice car.
Maybe you can tell me about the time when you had your unfortunate encounter and your teeth knocked out and how you survived.
1968. It is a long time ago.
Yeah, almost 20 years. It's a story everyone gets wrong, though, so this is your chance to play.
Yeah. I used to go to this hotel in the Fillmore to cop every day. And I was working in Sausalito at the Trident. And I used to use the stairway. I'd go up to the second floor. And one day I went in and I looked up and there was a guy up there that I'd seen in the Connections apartment. And I had the feeling that he was going to try to rip me off. So I just put my hand in my pocket and, as if I had a gun, and I kept on walking up the stairs, and he backed off. But the next day when I came down, he had these 5 young black cats waiting for me. And what happened?
They knocked all your teeth out.
Well, the guy walked up to me and asked me what time it was, and while he cold-cocked me, and I went down into the street, and then I jumped up, and we fought, and they were all around me, and I ran, and we'd fight, and I'd run. And I even jumped into a car at one point with 4 older white guys, about 30 years old, and they were all around the car. Get out of that man's car. He don't want you in his car. Get out, you know. And they pushed me back out in the street again. All they had to do was drive off. So it started all over again. And then 2 older black guys threw a broadside in the middle of the street, and they looked like they could have been detectives. And when they did, these guys backed off, and they snatched me in the car and took me to the hospital. Yeah.
And did you have to get your whole jaw rewired and everything?
No, but my mouth had been damaged to the point where the best thing to do was to take them all out. I didn't have good teeth anyway. You know.
Did you already know you were determined that you would play again?
It took me about 6 months to make up my mind to even try to find a way to play with dentures. But I played 25 years with just one front tooth.
Oh, wow. And how did you survive during that 3-year period?
Oh, a lot of things. I worked in a gas station for a while, from 7 in the morning till 11 at night. That was about the hardest one.
Pumping gas?
Sure.
Did anyone recognize you?
No, not really.
And you had no teeth?
No, I had dentures. I had teeth. Before I played in front of a New York audience, it took me 3 years. It was Dizzy that got me the job. He made a phone call to New York and came back, and a few minutes later he said, I got you 3 weeks of work at the Half Note in New York. So that was nice.
So that was do or die, you're on again. And everybody was wondering if you could play, right?
Yeah.
I make a date for gold. You can bet it rains. I try to throw a party. Gas stairs complain. I guess I'll just survive. Just catching colds and missing trains. Everything happens to me. I've telegraphed and phoned, sent an airmail special too. Your answer was goodbye. fell in love just once. It had to be with you. Everything happened to me. Happens to me.
As I told you, the first minute I saw him, I was in love with him.
And you said he looked like a Greek god.
Yes,
at 40
yes,
when you met him.
exactly. Well, he did. And he still does.
Of course, there's always a huge scene whenever we split up. It's very volatile. It's screaming and yelling and throwing things out into the parking lot. We get back together, but I went up to San Francisco where he was playing a gig, and I was so happy to see him, but he was very aloof. He was pleasant. How are you doing? You look great. But I just wanted him again. I wanted to hold him and love him. And so down in the dressing room, I said, "Is it okay?" And he said, "What?" "Can I hold you for a minute?" He said, "Oh, I don't see why not." So I embraced him and I just broke down and I said, "Chet, how do you stop loving somebody?" And I just kept saying it over and over again. I asked him if we could meet tomorrow somewhere. I wanted to talk with him, just be with him for a while. He said, "Sure, meet me in front of blah, blah, blah." I don't know. I can't remember right now where it was. So I drove up there. I waited 6 hours. He never showed up. It was really devastating. That was 1977. And I saw him again in September 1982. Well, the story was he had broken up with Ruth, and he came back to see me, to be with me. But he was very unhappy, very distraught. But I was joyful. I was so joyful I didn't see his pain right away. Sometimes during recording sessions, especially the vocals, he was having some particular problem with the rhythm, or he couldn't fit the words with the rhythm, and so I kind of went over it with him. It's like this, and I'd snap my fingers, and he said, "Oh yeah, okay, all right." And he even remarked one night in a club, I was sitting next to him, and he said, "This is Diane, and I love to have her with me at recording sessions because she helps me with the tunes." My son found out that there were some violent things going on, that Chet was hitting me, and he had an occasion to talk to him on the telephone when Chet was at the airport, and he said to Chet, "If you ever touch my mother again, I will beat the hell out of you." Chet was loaded on Seconal, so he was not very coherent, but I could hear him say, "Oh, you little punk, your life isn't going anywhere."
The touch of your hand is like heaven, a heaven that I've never known. The blush on your cheek whenever I speak tells me that you are my own.
So it's a no-win situation with a junkie. I know that term is derogatory. I don't mean to be derogatory, but it's a no-win situation with a drug abuser. How's that better?
I remember what Chet said to me. when we took that photograph at the Whippoorwill in New York City?
No.
I'd like to have a photograph with Diane.
Really?
Yeah.
That's nice. That's very nice. You really can't rely on Chet. And if you know that, then you can pull through.
We had a party at my house in L.A. one evening. All the guys in the band and their wives and some other people talking and drinking and listening to music. And about 45 minutes goes by and I realize that we haven't seen a friend of mine in a long time. So I had to push open the door. The guy had slumped down in the corner with spikes still in his arm. It was a bright blue color. When I say blue, I mean blue. He hadn't taken a breath in a long time. So we started putting cold compresses on his neck and artificial respiration. And we did that for over 30 minutes before he finally made a sound, you know, like one of those kind of sounds. And 10 minutes later, we had him finally coming around, and he said, "You guys messed up my high." Well, you know, he was kind of out there. He didn't know what he was saying. I guess he was really loaded. I mean, he almost died that day.
Making me up.
You can use that as a mirror.
So, which one? Oh, that's right, this big reflection. I don't mean to walk away from you. Do you want me not to walk away? Okay. All right. Okay, so I'd rather try it open. If you can work it out from there, that'll be a lot easier. Okay. Okay. You were my adored one, then you became a bored one, and I was like a
Oh, to dress Chet. Oh, yes. This is fun. That brings to mind, I think, the best comment he ever made about clothes. Although there were two, really. Listen, Ruth, I'm not up there to win any beauty contest. That was the first one. And all I was talking about was a shower and a comb through the hair. The other one was the fact of once he finally knowing that I really did have his best interest at heart, which he was, I don't think, used to really in anybody ever at any time. Talked about, or just asked me finally about, like, turned around and said, "Hey, does this look okay?" And I said, "No, that stinks." He said, "Well, it's red, and it's red," and it was like this hideous burgundy with a pair of red pants, which in his mind, as long as it came from the Red family, it worked.
Listen to them play our song, how it shocks my poor brain with that electric refrain. I get a buzzing just
Chet
like a dancing.
did not discourage me to sing. He wasn't supportive of it. There's a big difference. But it depends on where your own self-confidence is. And I didn't have that. He thrived on that as much as I'm sure he thrives much more so on Diane or on past people, Carol, Halima, and the rest of them. And so I'm just lucky that those years that I did spend weren't fruitless. Finally, because my ears were open, my heart was open, and my head was open. More than that, well, my legs were open too once in a while, but you know.
In your case, it was only the music? I mean, what else was there about him?
For me, it was only the music. And it was back to the fascination. It was a personality. It was somebody I had a tremendous regard for. It would be like living with Picasso. I mean, if you appreciate art, you appreciate it. And to me, that was the closest that I ever got to something that I hailed as being, from my personal point of view, greatness. Which anybody who has any sensibility for creative means wants to be connected to. It was getting as close as I could to my own element.
Did you have any income of your own, or did you have to depend upon him for your existence?
When I was about 21, I got a chunk of money. And when I met him, I was only 22, remember? So I'm not a frivolous broad that just goes left and right getting rid of stuff. I had enough of an amount left. And I suppose that's part of what Chet must have zeroed into with his kind of ability to know those things. But systematically, he ended up draining me out of that completely. And I'm sure he knows that too. You know, I've never felt that those things even out very easily in relationships. And I didn't want to make an announcement to him, even though I didn't realize the kind of neurotic idiot he was and had this dependency on anything, whatever. It's not even about heroin per se, whatever. You know, what's mine is mine and what's yours is yours, that kind of deal. And he did support me, I must say, as best he could, but he was very arrogant about that.
Chet told us a story, a terrible story, about how he got his teeth knocked out.
It's terrible, isn't it?
What's your version?
In my opinion, the story that he's handed out over that incident is quite false. No, that's not the truth. That's Chet Baker in his typical way of gaining the sympathy for himself. Well, let's put it that he ran into the wrong person. Somebody just decided, I don't give a fuck if you are Chet Baker. And yes, his teeth were definitely knocked out of his head. Somebody went for him, but not for the reasons that he described. Really, what had happened in truth was that somebody kicked his ass for his manipulating ways, only figuring out, I guess, at the end, what's the best way to get this guy? He's a trumpet player. His mouth is the most important thing to him. Let's go for it. So whatever these 5 black cats are that he had described, I'm sure, as to the ones who jumped him. No, they didn't jump him because he had a wad of money anywhere, or all that's a bunch of shit. What happened is that somebody sent those guys out to do a job, and they did it. And he paid dearly for it.
Do you know how lost heart feels?
One by one, they were pulled. Did he tell you that? Because of the beating that he got to his face, he had to eventually go and see a dentist because there were just like stubbles of teeth left. And every one was pulled one at a time. And that's why he glorifies this incident, just the way I did, one at a time. And then his overuse in this story is to me even more obvious because Chet is such a manipulator that he loves to gain the sympathy out of all of these horrendous things that happened to him. And then you get a new set of works here. For him it was nothing, because those stupid teeth are still in his head 25 years later. I used to glue them back together.
With sleepless eyes, how could you know what love is? What love is? What love is?
I got arrested because, actually because of newspapers in Lucca. Because at the time, I was living in a clinic in Lucca. And my doctor would take me to work at night and stay there and bring me back to the clinic. So I was under a controlled, cure, I was doing. And one day I had to go to Viareggio in the daytime, and he couldn't get away. So I rented a car, and he gave me my medicine for the day. On the way over to Viareggio from Lucca, I stopped in a gas station to make an injection, and I was in there quite a while, and I had just finished and I cleaned up and was getting ready to leave, and there was a knock on the door, and it was the police. And they asked me if I would come with them, and they took me to the police station, and they called my doctor, and he came to the police station and got me and took me back to the clinic. And the next day when the newspaper came out, it said that I had been found unconscious in the toilet of a gas station, that the police had to break in the door, that the room was covered in blood. Completely ridiculous story. So naturally, the city attorney, I guess, the district attorney, he started an investigation. He arrested 2 doctors. He arrested my wife. He arrested the man that ran the hotel where I lived. He arrested a friend of mine who was visiting Italy, who was an attorney. He went to Milano to get my wife, Halima, and told her he just wanted her to come back to Lucca to sign a statement. And once he got her in his district, he took her passport and arrested her. Can you believe that? Went to Florence on appeal, and 3 months taken off my time, so I only did 15 months. But during that time, I played a lot and thought a lot about getting the hell out of there.
Well, if you said that Chet signed this paper to you, make a film on his life?
Mm-hmm.
Or do a book on his life?
I would reserve the rights of anything that ever would be approached to him.
He signed the same paper for me.
Uh-huh. So then we have a lot in common. And he was a lot nicer, a lot more fun to be around, if you can even say such a thing. But it was because of his insecurity of himself that things were quite different. I was raised in a show business background, and it was motion pictures, and it was only classical and jazz music in the house. At that time, Jane Russell was a very, very dear friend of the family. She's sort of a technical godmother, I suppose. And she and my mother and my father and Marilyn, who was involved with some projects with my father, used to go and hang out and listen to music. It was really mostly because of Jerry Mulligan more than it was because of Chet Baker. But of course, they ended up falling madly in love with him, as everybody does. And my mother eventually kept handing me record after record, but it was a composite of Sinatra and the old singers too, Anita O'Day, whom I adored, and Peggy Lee and Julie London and Chris Connor and June Christie. By the time I was 7, I used to love to dance to Frank Sinatra records, and that's when I had these little dreams of singing, and that's how it all started for me, I suppose, because it was my mother's reaction to this guy that stuck with her so terrifically that she just turned it over to me. So it started a long time ago. It's so funny how things turn around. And I did end up finally running into Chet. I met him at the Half Notes, passed by this place, and I see Chet Baker stuff in the window, name-wise, featuring him. And that's all I need at this moment, is to see this. Eventually in he walked and headed for the bandstand, and nothing was said, but we glanced at each other. Then I watched him throughout his performance, and he was gaunt in hair terribly, terribly. And he was wearing that red and burgundy combination that he thought was such a big hit, which was wild, with a pair of cowboy boots, and just, he looked absolutely horrible. But still, he was charming. It was still my hero walking into the room. So I listened and I watched, and it was great. And I just had to thank him. I said something like, hey, I've got to tell you, it's really great to see you. I think you're doing a hell of a job. Because he sounded like shit. He was trying so hard, and that was what was so endearing, to see this man completely reveal himself, to look so horrible, to sound so terrible, but to be standing there and trying again. And that's what was the moment that I connected with. And so he said, well, you know, that's really nice to hear and all this stuff, and it was real cute. And then he said, well, don't be a stranger. So I went back the next night, and that was it. And then we just started hanging out, like, permanently from that time. So it took, like, exactly about 20 seconds to get hooked.
Daydream, don't break my reverie until I find that she is daydreaming just like me.
Hello. Adriano.
Cosa vuoi, americano? Sì? Pupa? Pupa!
Get down! Take my place. Come on, let's see some action.
You know, we come out to Oklahoma. It's so important for all of us because we see these photographs of him from a long time ago that Bill Claxton took. And we see your son Paul looking so much like he did when he was really young. And that's why we keep saying to you, is there a story, is there something romantic that happened that you could share with us that would make us be able to feel and be at that time?
I don't know who it really is. I can't think of anything. I met Chet in Italy in 1960. I'd gone there to work with the Shirley Bassey show, and we were a bunch of kids in the show that were going to this nightclub every night to see him. And they kept saying, you got to come down and see Chet Baker, you know, he's in town. I said, well, who's Chet Baker? You know, I never heard of him. So anyway, the Friday night I finally gave in. I thought, well, I'm going to go, and then he won't keep bugging me. So I did. And when I first saw Chet, I couldn't believe it was the person they'd been talking about. No way, you know, they were telling me all this stuff about drugs and being busted and going to jail, and he'd been married twice, and he sounded like a real character, you know. When I saw him, he looked so young and he was good looking, and he could play.
Well, I was working actually in a little club in Milano, And I had been there several months, and the big show came through town, one part of which was announced by a German girl, another by an Italian, and Carol had the English part. One of those circus kind of things with girls running around skimpily clad in furry garments, with long tails, and other girls in hip boots, shiny patent, and with cracking whips, and dig all these furry things running about.
Before Chet, I dated Terence Stamp about 9 months. I dated him on and off. He was living with Michael Caine then in an apartment on Wimpole Street. They had a lot of fun up there. Meanwhile, I went to Italy, so after I met Chet, I didn't ever go back, so I didn't ever see Terry again. And we had a great time at first, especially in Rome. I love Rome. We had a great time, and we were chased around by the paparazzi a lot. They'd be waiting outside the hotel in the bushes, and that really got on our nerves because we had 2 rooms, at this hotel for appearance's sake and for my parents, because they were always on my back, Because Chet had all his troubles in Italy, so he was newsworthy. Chet enjoyed going out. Just bust on me. That dress in the picture of the shaker, the zipper went out. I gained some weight while I was there. We ate so much. Yeah, we used to do a lot of restaurant scenes then.
Wasn't Chet separated from Halima and with you when he went to jail in Italy?
When he did the 16 months?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was with him before it happened. And waited for him. And I went back to Lucca and stayed. And it was great. I mean, nobody could do enough for him. It was like he was a hero now that he'd done 16 months, in jail and gone through all this. And they just fell over themselves to do things. He had so much work and was being photographed all the time. You know how it is.
Why did you wake me up, you crazy old man?
Excuse me. The cornet.
Thank you.
No, I just lost it when I met Chet. I just forgot everything, It surprises me that I did that now when I think about it. I didn't really think about where it was going to end. I met Chet, and that was it. Just took off with him.
How do you feel when he leaves and he doesn't say goodbye?
He just leaves as he comes, which is okay. It's always a little bit of a surprise, when you've planned dinner or something and you've just been to the market. Spend a few bucks for groceries and you come home and he's gone, What are we going to do with all this food now? We had to go on welfare for a while because he couldn't work. Meanwhile, he got his dentures fixed and picked up his horn to start practicing again and couldn't make a sound. Not a sound. And he didn't think he was going to be able to play again. He really didn't. But when we moved back to New York in 73, things started to happen for Chet slowly. He worked at a nightclub for 9 months, Strikers. The business did good, and then he got other offers, and he did Carnegie Hall, and he wanted to go back to Europe very much, but he couldn't. He wasn't allowed into Germany or Italy or England, and those were places where he had a lot of work, so he wasn't moving around too much. And then he found out he could go back to Europe from about 75 on, and spending a lot of time away. And I guess that's when the marriage really started to disintegrate.
Carol, when Dean had his accident...
Do I have to?
No, you don't have to.
You got to use it. I mean,
Well, no, don't if you feel funny about it.
When Dean was run down by a drunk driver and they flew him to Tulsa, I called Chet in Europe several times, and I know he got the message that Dean was badly hurt. I wanted him to call home, I needed a little support at that time, moral support. But he never did call or write, and I thought maybe he didn't get the message, but I did find out he did get the message, so I don't know whether it was just he couldn't deal with it, and that's why. But it would have been nice if, he had a call. I know Dean would have liked it. But he didn't.
Who was with him at that time?
Do I have to talk about that? No. I don't. I'd rather not. Doesn't matter, really. Well, everybody else says, you met Ruth Young? You mean you interviewed that bitch? You edit that out. That was his downfall, let me tell you. You're not going to put any of this on. That was his downfall, Ruth Young. That's when Chet changed. I didn't want to talk about that, but since you say you've met her, that was when he started taking drugs. She was a very, very destructive force in his life. Really, in truth, the first one was a maniac. The second one, Halima, was supposedly, this is his description, was frigid. Carol was a virgin. She never knew anybody. Now, can you imagine that from the time you're 19, she's now 45. She's been separated from him. He rejected, abandoned, deserted her 20 years ago, and she still says, hello, don't tell him we want anything. We'd just like to see him once in a while. So it's like it's 1 is the crazy, 2 is the frigid, 3 is the Virgin Mary, and then I come, no, then Diane is the, well, I don't know what category we can put her in. She would find it more scintillating that you skip all of this seriousness and just roll out the cameras for them in a bedroom. I love that.
I went over there to visit Dad once. I didn't know he'd left town yet. You know, I thought he was still there, and I knocked on the door, and I knocked, and there was no answer, and I looked through the window and couldn't see anybody in there, and the window was cracked. It was about 3-4 inches open, and I tried the gate, and the gate was open, unlocked and everything, and I just went in and got some of my dad's awards and some of his records and stuff.
She didn't want Ruth to have him in the event that...
Mainly stuff that belonged to him, you know, but I also got her back for a few things that she'd said to me and done to me, too. And I don't feel guilty about a bit of it, either.
How'd you get back at her?
Well, when I went to Europe with her, I knew what meant the most to her, like her jewelry and stuff like that. I knew what meant the most to her and what would have hurt the most and what she'd had the longest, you know. So I knew where her jewelry was and everything, and she had some sexy clothes.
There's a line between love and fascination. It's hard to see on an evening such as this, for they both have the very same sensation when you're lost in the magic of his kiss. Something like that. That little end thing might not have been right on it, but that's it. Yes, love and fascination. You said it, baby. Because that's the stuff, fascination, which is the old black magic, and it's all connected. That's mystique. But that isn't necessarily real. And that's what takes a long, long time to figure out, to separate one's gift from oneself.
Blame it on my youth.
they're not really into music, any of them, that way, you know. Although my oldest boy, by my second marriage, Halima, he's supposed to have a very, very nice voice. And,
Which boy's that?
he was born in 1957 for my second wife, Halima Ali. She was half Pakistani and half Indian, East Indian.
What's his name, Chet?
His name is Chesney Aftab Baker. Aftab means the sun in Indian. I wrote a nice lullaby. It's kind of pretty. Ba-da-da, ba-da-da-da-dee. Ba ba da 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 ba da 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 ba da.
And somebody else I haven't met before.
The dog
That he's picked up hitchhiking or something. Last time
he's a nomad. He travels all the time. He never settles down. One place to another.
Carefree.
He always just
Hard to
misses
say.
out on seeing his dad, though.
Yeah.
He always manages to come down, he doesn't he? A week or two after, and when he finds out Chet has been and gone, he's always kind of upset. He always misses out seeing
Wonder
him.
how long it's been since he's seen him.
Because Chet never lets anyone know he's coming.
He's crazy about pets. You know, he always has about 3 dogs.
He picks them up on the highway, doesn't he, Vera?
I think so.
He's worked at different things.
I just tried to instill in them that a good way to go in this life is to find something that you really enjoy doing and then learn to do it better than anybody. And you won't have any problems.
I love you, Dad.
Stay in touch. Don't be such a stranger.
Quit screwing around.
We need some financial help, Dad.
I think that ought to hit him.
In this last 57 years, I must have lived several lifetimes. I have a lot of things to try yet. I want to get this house and have access to a piano, which I've never had before, and write some tunes. And well, you know, I've recorded over 900 tunes now. To do have a kind of feeling of bringing back certain moments from the past and things that were played, things that were said by different people, a lot of which aren't here anymore. So many of my friends have died in the last 10 years. I guess beginning with about the time Bill Evans went. Well, before that, Al Haig, who was, I think, only 50 years old or something like that. And then Paul Desmond and Joe Farrell and Sonny Stitt, Art Pepper, Zoot is gone.
What's your favorite kind of high?
Oh, golly. The kind of high that scares other people to death. Yeah.
What's that?
Oh, I guess they call it a speedball. It's a mixture of cocaine and heroin, you know. If you got the right mixture, not too much coke, you know, because that first rush of coke and is a devastating feeling. I mean, scary, you know. We're going to rehearse from about 4 till 6 or 4:30 till 7 or something. I want to take Diane shopping for before that.
What are you gonna buy? Clothes?
Well, I want to get her a little camera, you know, not expensive, something that all those photographers.
See that girl? What do you think? Hot? You like him big? Hey, did you get enough at the hotel?
You fiend. I'll drink to that.
I'll drink to that. You have your commentary.
Song coming up. Bring about 18 chocolate cream pies.
You mean a basic one?
No, anybody. Just kind of start a small riot. So here's the serenade, Nick.
Ce l'ha un bagnino lì.
Bread and butter.
You're talking
and champagne. Bread and butter and champagne. Just friends. Not like before. To think of what we've been. Not to kiss again.
Hi, Cherry.
Seems like pretend.
My hands wrapped for the day.
It isn't you.
Dad, sing us another song. So many people here have never heard you before and never hear you again.
Oh.
And it is so beautiful.
Well,
please, Chet.
I'm not dead yet.
So how's it going, Chet?
It's going okay, and people couldn't care less about the music. No.
Oh, there's still applauding
Compared to the New Morning in Paris, which holds almost as many people, and you can hear a pin drop when we play. That's the difference.
Well, it's a festival crowd, you know.
Yeah. The worst possible crowd we can play for.
The worst possible you want to win.
Try to get the call back.
I need some cigarettes. I gotta get some cigarettes somewhere. And we've come to that time of the evening when there's not much time left. The tune is called almost blue. Flirting with this disaster became me. It named me as a fool who only aimed to be almost blue, almost touching it will almost do. There's a part of me that's always true, always. Almost you, almost me, almost blue. Thank you.
I know, Chet, you ran out of your methadone, and, well, we've made arrangements with your doctor in Amsterdam to get you some more. You're feeling sick and desperate these last couple of days. But it's been so painful to see you like this.
Well, Bruce, you want me to level with you and tell you the truth. But in doing that, it only creates pain on your part, you know. And this is a big drag and completely unnecessary. Because I am 57 years old. And, you know, there's just no other way I could get through this last 5 days. There was no other way. But now you can set this thing up. But I didn't know that would be possible. I hope everything will be all right.
One more thing, Chet. Will you look back on this film in years to come and think of it as good times?
How the hell else could I see it, Bruce? How the hell else could I see it? Santa Monica, that scene in that hotel, and the bar, and the bump cars, and in the studio, and on the beach. It was so beautiful. The whole thing was a dream, you know. Just things like that don't happen. Just a very few